Do this question on your own before looking at my explanation of this. So it says generally scientists enter their field with the goal of doing important new research. Okay, so this is their goal with which they enter their field. This is generally the case. Okay, and accept as their colleagues. So accept is parallel to enter. So the scientists accept as their colleagues those with similar motivation. Similar motivation means similar motivation of doing important new research. Okay, so they accept as their colleagues those people who have similar motivation. Okay, therefore, when any scientist, okay, so we have therefore here, when any scientist wins renown as an expounder of science to general audiences. Okay, so when any scientist wins renown as sort of expounder of science to normal people, general audiences, most other scientists, okay, so most other scientists conclude, what do they conclude? That this popularizer means who is winning renown as an expounder of science to general people, right? So he's popularizing science in a way because he's really communicating science to normal people. So this popularizer should no longer be regarded as a true colleague. Okay. So when any scientist wins renown as this, most other scientists conclude that okay, this should not be regarded as a true colleague. And why? Right? The why is, or the support is this, that scientists enter their field with the goal of doing important new research and accept as their colleagues those with similar motivation. Okay. So they are accepting as colleagues those with similar motivation of doing important new research, and now they are therefore they are thinking that this popularizer should no longer be regarded as a true colleague. Okay, so right, if you look at the connection between these two, it looks like that these scientists, most of the scientists, these are thinking that this popularizer would no longer have that motivation of doing important new research. Right, that seems to be the connection between the two sentences. Okay, the explanation offered above for the low esteem in which scientific popularizers, so these expounder of science to general audiences, in which scientific popularizers are held by research scientists, assumes that explanation offered above for the low esteem. So why are we calling it low esteem? Because the scientists are thinking that this should not be regarded as a true colleague, right? So they do not deem that person worthy of being regarded as a true colleague. So they are right uh, looking at that person in low esteem. So the explanation offered above for the low esteem. What is the explanation? Right. The first statement is the explanation. This, therefore. So the explanation for the therefore part is the first one, which is that they are entering their goal. They're entering the field with the goal of doing important new research, and they're accepting as their colleagues those people with the goal of doing important new research. So that is the explanation, and that explanation is for the thing that they are thinking that this popularizer should no longer be regarded as a true colleague. Okay, so now this explanation assumes that, right, as we discussed, that the assumption seems to be, or the link seems to be, that the scientists are thinking that this guy popularizer would not be really having a goal of doing important new research. Okay, let's look at option A. Serious scientific research is not a solitary activity. Okay, it cannot be done by a person alone, but relies on active cooperation among a group of colleagues. Okay, so this is serious scientific research. Okay, if this is not a solitary activity, or is it's a solitary activity, how does that matter to the argument? Right? Even if it is solitary activity, two people can be doing their own stuff, right? And two people can still be colleagues, right? So whether it's a solitary activity or it's not a solitary activity, whether it relies active cooperation or doesn't rely on active cooperation, doesn't really matter. So this has no impact on the argument. Research scientists tend not to regard as colleagues those scientists whose renown they envy. Now, we are not anywhere talking about that anybody is envying this guy's renown, right? We are just saying that when any scientist wins renown as an expounder of science, the most of the scientists conclude this. Now, whether they envy the renown of this guy, nowhere given. Okay, so this has no impact. Secondly, it's saying they tend not to regard as those scientists whose renown they envy. Right? It's not talking specifically about renown as an expounder of science to general audiences. It's talking renown in general. So it could be renown in the scientific community, right? Some people could become famous in the scientific community for the research that they have done. Now, other scientists may not consider them colleagues. That has no impact on this argument. Option C. A scientist can become a famous popularizer without having completed any important research. So, okay, a scientist can become a famous popularizer without having completed any important research. So, without doing any important research, that person can become a famous popularizer. Okay, so a person can win renown as an expounder of science without having completed any important research. Okay, so this has again no impact because the point is not whether the person has already done important research or not, right? The point is whether that guy has a motivation of doing important new research in the future, right? That whether that's the goal of that person or not, right? We are not looking at okay, only those people are considered colleagues now who have already done important new research, right? So as long as the guy has a motivation of doing important research, it's saying that they consider them colleagues. So this is talking about past, so this is not relevant. Option D. Research scientists believe that those who are well known as popularizers of science means who are popularizing science to general audiences, so expounder of science to general audiences. These guys are not motivated to do important new research, right? So these guys are not going to do these do not have this as a goal to do important new research. Since these guys do not have that goal, so that's the reason they should not be considered as a true colleague. So it's a great supporter, right? It supports the argument, and if we negate it that they do not believe this, if they do not believe so, in that case they do not have a reason to conclude that this popularizer should no longer be regarded as a true colleague. So that would break down the argument. Okay, so option D is the answer. Option E. No important new research can be accessible to or accurately assessed by those who are not themselves scientists. So, no important new research can be accessible to non scientists or can be accurately assessed by non scientists. So, that does not matter whether it's accessible to or accurately assessed by non scientists or not. We are talking about scientists, right? And whether research scientists consider this scientist as a colleague or not. So this again has no impact. So option D is the answer.